This is Power 102 Digital Monday, and
Yeah,
today we have a very special program that is going to be beamed to you with host Karen Nunez
right.
Teixeira.
Good.
Hard Talk starts now
Right.
with Karen Nunez Teixeira. Good
Yeah.
afternoon, Karen.
Good afternoon to you, David McIntyre. And I have to say a special, first of all, thank you, Marla, because you are in a completely different time zone to us. Let's start with that.
That's all
And
right.
yes, but not only are you in a different time zone to us, but a very inconvenient one for you. And so we do appreciate that as we in Burgundians and the Caribbean appreciate it. And I can't forget David McIntyre because this is not as usual. I didn't explain all the ins and outs to it, and I don't want to go into all the technicalities. But let me just say that David McIntyre made an extraordinary effort to be able for us to have a pre-recording, because what we've had to do today is to pre-record, because we are very happy that you have agreed to come on. And I think this is the second time you've come on for the day. And so
Yes.
there's so much pressure to do this, but I will put it this way. I would say it's your commitment and love of your all things Caribbean. That's what I'm going to put it as. But I am going to say, first of all, we, of course, welcome you on the show and thank you for coming even twice in a day, which has to be difficult. For David McIntyre, I know he has challenges, and that for him to have made that effort for us speaks volumes for his commitment to 102 FM, and I hope to his own show, Hard Talk. So let me let you have David do what he normally does before I get into. Everybody knows the name Ala Dukaran. It's no strangers. Before I do that, and it's probably the second time you're hearing it. I'm not too sure what was said on the previous show, but my approach is more organic, and I certainly take part in the conversation. So I would let David do the needful, and again thank him for making that really, really special effort for us today. So, David, you'll give us the numbers.
Yes. Good afternoon, Ms. Dukaran. The numbers to connect with us are 222-8255, 222-8255. Our toll-free number, 866-525-1099. Our toll-free number, 866-525-1099. You can also send your comments via Facebook or YouTube as we are streaming live on both platforms. So over to you,
Right,
Karen.
right. But it is a pre-recorded show. And what I've learned, Marla, because I'm very new to this thing you called the technology, communications technology, maybe platform, not so much, but I'm definitely to this. And so what I realize is that, of course, when we do these programs, which I know you do know, that Facebook and YouTube, people can listen to it later on. I've met people who have told me that. So that's a good thing. So pre-recorded, we're doing it that way. But let me just say that, as I said, I am not quite sure what was said in the first show. So what I will do is do a very short introduction to you, but I want to take a more organic approach. And I want you to take a lot of the lead on it because, of course, you know that your article started up a whirlwind of, if you what you said didn't have any value, you don't throw stones at an empty mango tree. So for to start with, the fact they take you on is because you made it and because it made sense. And that's the truth. That's the truth. Because if it didn't make sense and you weren't someone that is renowned and well respected, you'd have put it on the back page somewhere and lose it somewhere. Okay? So let me just say by way of introducing you, and I will hand over a lot of it to you, and we can have a conversation. You just by your degree, your qualifications, you're more than qualified with your BSc, MSc, MPhil, all from UWI St. Augustine, real Trinity person. Me too, all my education is from the Caribbean. I don't know what that says. You've done 6 years as a resident in Barbados, where I lived for 4 years. We never met, though I'm not sure why. And you've done a lot of reports on different aspects of the Caribbean. So many, many reports. One of them, National Statistical Institute, which is one of the things that I feel strongly about. and you spend a lot of time dealing about with the injustices and the lack of the fact that there's so many people in the Caribbean who suffer from a lack of equity, economic equity. But that's not the topic today, but of course it does touch on it, and I know you're going to show us how it is interrelated. So I'm going to say to you before I give you the complete stage is this two things I want to say. So when I was looking, to what I would want to start with, I saw an article that you had been interviewed on, and they asked you in the interview what was the most important quality of an economist, and what was your answer? Remember?
To be impartial and to speak about what the evidence shows us, and to not be afraid to do that. We have a responsibility to do that. Maybe that was my answer.
Yeah, but what you did even more than that, and it's even more so relevant today because what you're saying is a broad brush of what you believe, but because of your specialty and your area specialty, you know what statistics can do. I don't know if I pronounced that word right correctly. It's one of the words that I'm challenged with. But
Me
when they
too.
are okay, good, we have some strong ones. Um, you said that your first answer was integrity, but then you went on to say you can lie with statistics. You've seen economy, you can manipulate them. You've seen economists and politicians across the region engaging in misinformation. Before that became a very popular, that's a new word, misinformation, and spinning stories irrespective of the facts and data. And I think I really, really got to you. And you talked about the use of statistics, and I think it really does lead on to what calls the all is brouhaha, as they like to say, and all is response, which would never have happened if you weren't making a good point. I'll say one more thing before I hand over to you. And if you do not mind, you'll have a lot of listeners who don't even understand what you mean with balance of payment. They've heard the term, unless they did it in, SE or something. They don't understand what it means. And you have made a point at a later point. I had even quoted you at a later point where you even said, see, I tried to follow you, where you even said that it's no point talking all this talk, all this jargon, and so on, if people don't understand what you're saying. You might as well be
That's
talking to
true.
yourself, right? So
That's true.
I want to say one thing that helped me to prepare. I looked at a lot of articles, which, a lot of them said the same thing. But this one I think goes along the line of what you have been seeing and really gives strength to what you're seeing. And I'm just going to mention the article if anybody wants to read it. I'm sure you know what it is. It helped me anyhow. It is called Nova Information Management School, MEGI or MEGI, MEGI, as an article on net errors and omissions in the balance of payment statistics, impacts, causes, and effects by a man called Thomas Christensen, which was published in 2016. I found it helpful for me. So I just want to mention that if people want to be like me, the newbies, and really get a handle on it. But I'm going to hand it over to you to explain to people, first of all, before we go do a deep dive into errors and omissions, what is balance of payments and how does errors and omissions factor into that?
Okay. Again, thank you for having me, Karen. I mean, yeah, this is an important subject, and I'm grateful that you want to spend the time and the effort to talk about it with me today, because of course a lot needs clarification. First, I want to say that when I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago, but that's not the first time I've written about this. I've started digging in all of the things that I've written, and I found something as far back as 2017, but I know I wrote about it before, but let's say I could find 2017, right? So it's been a while that I've been highlighting this problem. And I think that if I could leave your listeners with one thing, it's that we have to solve this problem. It is not a
What
small
is the
problem,
problem? What is
right?
balance of payments?
I'll get to that, but understand that this is a really big problem. It's something I highlighted, like I said, years ago, as I can find articles that I wrote in 2017. And I cited what the IMF had said at the time, and it still has not been solved. And it is not a small issue. The problem is, and let me see if I can break down the problem. So the balance of payments account is the account that captures all of the transactions your country makes with the rest of the world, right? So all of your exports, all of your imports, all of your remittances, all of your investments abroad, all of your investments from abroad into your country, the foreign direct investment. All of that is captured. All of your foreign exchange transactions are captured in the balance of payments account. Now, as I said in my article I wrote a couple of weeks ago, there are errors. From the time you start to measure anything, Karen, you start to make mistakes. Even if you have to measure the length between here and here, if the ruler is not good, you will make a mistake in how you measure, right? So all statistics, all data, there is some margin of error, okay? Fine. And everybody has, each country has a balance of payments account, and each country has an errors and omissions item in their balance of payments account. What does the errors and omissions item capture? It captures when you take the sum total of all of your transactions with the rest of the world, you end up with a net position, either a positive or a negative position. If it's a positive position, it means your reserves should have increased. So you started with $10, you exported 5, you imported 2, and your net position is, let's say, your reserve supposed to be $5. But when you check the balance on your reserves, the balance on your reserve is only $3. So the errors and omissions item will be $2. The difference between what your reserves should have been after you've tallied all of your international transactions and what your reserve actually is. And that number is the errors and omissions item. And all countries have an errors and omissions line in their balance of payments account. There is going to be error, there's going to be mistakes, and as you and I discussed, timing errors, all kinds of errors, fine. The problem arises when two things. One, those errors are very, very large and consistently so. Now, the IMF says that on average, your errors and omissions item should not be more than 2 to 3% of GDP. Let me pull up my data here because I did this calculation for many, many countries. And there are only 3 countries, when you add up all the errors and omissions items from 2011 to 2022, there are only 3 countries that consistently have larger and negative errors and omissions items relative to GDP that's larger than ours, right? So that tells you we're in a special class, right? When ours is so large, we're the 4th largest relative to GDP on Earth. Ours is totaling from 2011 to 2022, about 77% of GDP, okay?
So what does GDP mean? I know what it means, but
GDP is basically the size of your economy. All of the economic activity that took place in your economy in 1 year, if you measure it, it's GDP. That's in essence what it is.
Goods and services.
Good. Yes. So it's supposed to be, the errors and omissions item supposed to balance your reserves with what it should be. It should be small. It should be a random number if it's purely statistical error. And like I said in my original article a couple of weeks ago, for sure we have statistical errors, right? Everybody does. The problem is, why is ours only negative? Why is our errors and omissions item only negative? Can't it be that some years we have a larger reserve figure than we should have? Why is it always a smaller figure causing the errors and omissions item to be negative, meaning that we have an outflow that we cannot explain, right? Our reserves are like $3 instead of $5. Why is it not $10 instead of $5? So the fact that it's consistently negative is one problem. and the fact that it's large, right, tells us that something besides statistical error is going on here. And that's why I think we have a real problem. Now, the fact that it has been occurring since 2011, I know for sure that the authorities are aware of it. The IMF has talked about it. And yet still, there is no alarm raised. There is no meaningful policy agenda to address it. Tells me that there isn't the political will to fix it. And I don't know why. Because $2 billion a year leaving... $2 billion leaving the country every year, Karen, is unacceptable when the average person, when they go to the bank and they have to travel, or they can't get $200, but $2 billion is leaving our country unaccounted for on average every year.
Can I say something? Because,
yeah,
and the reason why I'm going to say it, sometimes it's good to not have too much knowledge on a topic, because which is me. Right? And the reason I'm saying that is that I know most people, even if they have a simple business, your business has to balance. If you sold $2 million worth of, I don't know, avocados on the credit side, on the debit side, you're owed $2 million. So your credit and debit, what you call double entry, they're supposed to balance out. And the balance is supposed to be zero, because what you sold is what you're supposed to get back at the end of the day. So when people talk about balance of payments and coming up to zero, what they really mean is at the end of the day, because there are a lot of accounts, which I'm sure you can explain, the 3 types of accounts and the most important one. But at the end of the day, when you might have, they say you can do this on a quarterly basis, but even if you have timing issues during the period, and I have a lovely example I thought, which I'll share after you have thing, because I mean, it's for me, like people like me who kind of, not as as knowledgeable about the economy as such. But at the end of the day, if you can't balance it off, something is wrong. Because if you sold me $2 million worth of clothes, that I am supposed to get $2 million worth of money back, right? And if I'm not getting it back, that means the account's not balancing. And what my understanding is, and you can correct me, is that they do it on a quarterly basis, but they say, okay, maybe you can have errors along the way, because a lot of things happen, with that purchase. A lot of things, they gave a good example, I thought, which I'll let you speak on first. But they gave a good example to show you at the end of the day why it is that it's not necessarily that you're stealing, but there's a lot of examples that you are from my research, definitely. But it shows you why it's complex, and that's why you can't. Timing is really important, because if the payment is, say, $2 million worth of avocados, but you paid me 40 out of the 2 million, you paid me 400,000, but you're a good customer, so I know I'll get you 600,000. But the period has ended. It's not balancing, but you say it will balance in the next period. So the errors and omission does the balancing for you, because they know you're going to get the 600,000. So all I was trying to say, people don't mind if you don't mind me saying that, because I know a lot of people don't. I mean, some people understand the double entry thing, credit on one side, debited on the side, and what you pay, what I sell you, I need to get back. And there are issues, and there are a lot of accounts, and there are 3 million, which I would like you to explain to people, the 3 accounts. But the most important account is the current one, because I think Dr. Farr went after you unfairly, and really and truly, I don't think he made a point. Let me be fair to him. He didn't write the headline. Let me just put it first. He did not write the headline. So let me put it first, and I know what that means. Because when I read his article, I don't know that he said anything different from what you were trying to say all the time. So if you could just go through the different kinds of accounts and why the most important account out of all of them is the current account, and why it has to come down to zero. And that is what the errors and omissions really, that's one of its major objectives. But what I would like you also to know, I'm not getting you too confused, or throwing too much at you, but also what I've liked you, because I don't think people understand, the man in the street. What that have to do with me? I don't understand. That has nothing to do with me. What I don't think people understand, even me, I have to say, is why is it that the balance of payments is so important to your country's economy? Maybe that's a good thing, a good point to make, because I don't think people understand why it's so important, because it's so far. They think it's far removed from them, but it is. When you go in the grocery and paying more for a tomato, that's why. Okay, that's part of the reason why. And I think people need to understand the connection with their own lives and the balance of payment, and why you have to get that zero, why you have to balance it off. And that's why you have this errors and omissions, which is complex but can be manipulated for sure. So if you
Well,
could just explain the balance of it, why it's so important.
yeah, why is it so important? So, like I mentioned, it's 25 billion that has left our country that we can't explain since 2011. It's 16,000 US dollars per person based on our population. And that's why it's important, because I'm sure you, Karen, or the average person, the average man on the street, when he wants to go travel and he goes to the bank and if he gets $200, he's lucky. If you tell him, it's $16,000 per person for each you and your family members, that would have made a big difference in people's lives in terms of the way that they would have been able to access foreign exchange to travel, in the way that they would have been able to access foreign exchange to pay for school for their kids and things like that. So it is significant when you can't use your credit card because the bank has imposed increasingly tighter every so often. They tighten the levels that you can only spend $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month. All of that, it ties right back to the fact that we've lost 25 billion US dollars since 2011. All of that is wrapped up in the fact that we have this problem. Now, before I get into the different accounts, and I feel like that's also maybe more technical than we need to get into, here's what I want to share. And you, I mean, having, the experience you have being Minister of Finance, you would understand this very well.
Yeah.
Every time everything we earn in foreign exchange in this country, all of our inflows come in through the banking system, all of our official earnings. So when somebody exports something, or when somebody earns their salary from abroad, for example, if they're a worker who's online working and they're earning their salary from abroad, all of that comes into the banking system through wire transfers, right? And the banks record all of this. So the bank's data is complete, in my view, with respect to the inflows as well as the outflows, because every time somebody pays for imports, every time somebody makes credit card transactions, all of those are recorded at the banks, and all of those are reported to the central bank. So even if customs, and what you were talking about with the avocados, that data will come through customs for the avocados landing on our border, right, at the port. Even if customs information is misclassified based on these codes, all of those things really, at the end of the day, don't matter as much, simply because the banks have all the official data. All of the wire transfers and credit card transactions are recorded by the banks and reported to the central bank. So the central bank has the data. And that errors and omissions item really boils down to two things. It boils down to statistical error, which we discussed, and we say every country has, everything you measure has error. But then there are also transactions that are deliberately opaque, that are deliberately not captured or not reported, or happen in, as I mentioned in my original article, or happen in cash, simply because they are deliberately trying to go outside of the system. Yes. Mm-hmm. So cash and, jewelry, precious stones, all of them. Exactly. So the question is, now, if each country has errors and if each country has some money laundering at some level, let's say we all do, right?
Right.
The question is, at what point do you think it's a problem. I mean, below a certain level, like the IMF said, errors and omissions item at 2 to 3% of your GDP,
Yeah.
don't worry about it.
Right.
It's a part of life.
Right.
But when it's the highest per capita in the world, when
Yeah.
it's 77% of GDP from 2011 to 22, and only 3 countries in the world
What
have
does 77% of GDP mean for the man in the street?
it means that if we did not lose all of this money via our errors and omissions item, our government may not have had to borrow a cent, because our debt to GDP is close to 80%.
And when you say debt, I know I'm drilling you down like a school
Yeah,
teacher.
borrowing. Our government
That
has
is for every product the goods and services that we produce, say $100, 77 cents of each of that dollars is debt. Isn't that what it means?
exactly. And who pays that? The future generations of this country,
That's
my
what
children and your children and grandchildren will have to pay that debt.
I don't think
So if
people understand that, Marla. I don't think when you honestly, maybe because you said, right, but in a way, being Minister of Finance, yes, I learned a lot from, and you talk, and, part of it, honestly, if I have to be transparent about it, of course, I didn't come from that background. So it was important for me to learn the lingo and to be able to master it. But then after you have tried as best I can, but after you've done that, you realize I have Mr. Pusad with me and Mr. Montano. We are favorites, fans of ours. I wish we could get some more, but good afternoon to them. But I think sometimes when you tell the man in the street, even a middle class person, 77% of GDP, that means nothing to them. They don't understand that you mean that for every dollar you earn, you owe 77 cents in debt to somebody.
Yep, that's what it means. And good for breaking that down. Thank you for that. And so, it's so my point again, going back, we have errors and we have, nefarious activity, right? In every country. At some point, you get to a point where you say, no, it's reached a limit now where it's just too much and we have to address it. 2 to 3% of GDP every year, okay, fine. But not like this. This is ridiculous. We have the highest per capita.
What percentage is it?
Well,
you have to put in a percentage.
It's around 8%.
All right. That's
Ours is around 8% of GDP. It's the highest per capita loss in the world. True. Right? It's the fourth highest relative to GDP. So we know we have a problem. We know we're special. It's no longer in that realm where you can excuse it, you can let it go. It is now one of the top the top per capita in the world and the fourth highest relative to GDP in the world. So we have an exceptional problem.
And I think I want to say, if I don't mind me interrupting, I hope you don't mind me.
Of course not. It's a conversation.
Yeah. The reason I did that is because it's a teacher in me, I suppose. My earrings fell off. My teacher in me, I suppose. And, you want the student who is not an economist or even near that to not feel lost. So you are losing, you're throwing away. What I think Marla Dukuran is telling you, it's one thing to say that you only made your debt is 8% of GDP. Well, every country has debt. Well, America and Japan certainly have a lot of debt, but they could carry it, right? But when you losing as much as 7% or 8% of your GDP, not because you didn't produce the goods well, not because you didn't have a market for the goods, not because of something, it's because you making a mistake, you making errors, and some of them are forced errors, and some of them are real errors, and some of them are errors that allow for persons for capital flight to take our money out of the country that could be used to benefit it. I want to ask you one thing before you go into that, because you made a point, and I am asking this because I want to make sure I understand it, and therefore, hopefully, it will be clearer to me. It's clear to me, hopefully it'll be clear to other people. Dr. Farrell, right? But as I said, he did not, I imagine, decide what the headline was going to be. So the headline was Dukuran's analysis. That's a word you have to watch. Yeah, analysis. I'm saying you're wrong, He didn't tell you you're wrong, which a lot of people will miss, the words they saw is not correct. I feel so, right? Okay, so after having said, this is what he said about what you said, because you just said that and I'm not doubting you, I just want you to explain it so that people understand it and we all understand it. You said that every dollar that comes in as an inflow or outflow passes through the banking system. That's what you just said.
All legitimate transactions, yes, pass through the
Okay, so
banking
this is
system.
what he said. No, he wasn't saying legitimate or not legitimate. I think he was making us, from my understanding, is that he was saying your analysis is starting from the wrong side because he is not dealing with legitimate. I didn't take it that that's what he was saying. He said, I took it when I wrote it down. He said it is not correct to say that export, it said it's very complicated. And I realize it is a complicated thing. It is complicated, but I think we make it more complicated. And you know what it is? It's the complication allow them to use Trinidad parlance. Any more bureaucracy built into that system is the more opportunity.
Even if it's complicated, Karen, it is complicated. It can't be that we're so special. We have the most complicated system in the whole world, that we have the highest in the world.
You said it was wrong. This is what she said. You said was wrong. Okay, so this is why I'm giving you a chance to answer him back, or to answer him. I shouldn't say answer him back, but to respond to what he said. He did say it's a question of classification, which again says, you working in the central bank? Is you making up them classifications? No, he said it's not correct for export earnings from oil and gas are remitted into the local banking system, because the balance of payment only attempts to account for financial flows, but other accounting transactions, and he used oil and gas as the example, may not be reflected in those flows and used through the banks, and use as an example oil and gas. So he is saying that when you say that all outflows and inflows pass through the banks, he is saying your analysis is wrong, because all of it does not pass through the banks. And he gave the example of oil and gas. He says it does not pass through the banking system. I don't know what it means, and I would like you to explain.
Karen, I also don't know what he meant by that. My only guess was that he meant that the monies go to the correspondent banks, because literally we don't have US dollar bank accounts in Trinidad and Tobago. You know that, right? If you have a US dollar bank account held at a local bank in Trinidad, that money actually resides in Bank of New York, Bank of America, in your bank's correspondent bank in the USA, right? And I'm guessing that that's what he means, where if you are earning money via exports, the money does not literally come on shore in Trinidad. It sits in your bank's correspondent bank account in New York. But be that as it may, it's still an inflow attributable to our country, because all of our foreign exchange reserves sit abroad. They don't sit in Trinidad and Tobago. They belong to our country, but they sit, because they're foreign currency denominated, they sit abroad. So that was my only way that I could have made sense of what he said.
Right, though, of him to do that. If it, in fact, I'm not picking up for you or anything, so Amala, I am really saying this genuinely. Unless the newspapers
misquoted.
edit it out,
Yeah.
no, but they edit. You can edit, and therefore it comes down to the same difference. Unless he said that it does not come through our local banking system here, but most banks in this country have a correspondent bank. That is,
they all do. They have to.
Does Scotia have that too? Anyway, I don't know. But anyway, our local banks have a correspondent bank. And so it was very misleading in my view, if that's what he said, and did not explain it, and did not explain what you just explained to me, which I did not understand until you said it. That what he should have said, if he said it, and Miss Dr. Farrell, I don't know if you said it, But if you said it and they didn't report it, that is very unfair to the public. What if what you was trying to say is it doesn't come into Republic Bank at 120 Frederick Street, Portsmouth. I don't know where they are, so I made that up. But it goes to Republic's correspondent banks through which all foreign currencies must pass. That's how it operates. You have a correspondent bank. That's why United States can use sanctions, and that's why you need a SWIFT code, and that's why they could punish you, because you have to go through a correspondent bank to get the money into your country. And if that is what he meant, that is not what that statement says. You know what that statement said to me? She doesn't know what she's talking about. The oil and gas does not pass through our banks, and not everything passes through our banks. Some pass through our banks, and some do. But and exact oil and gas. If he said that, and he did not go on to say the reason is because of what you just said, then either the newspaper is unfair to him, or he is being less than what shall I say, comprehensive in his response, which leaves the wrong impression. Because I really said, but if Dr. Farrell could say that about what Marla Dukran say, he ain't going to come out and say something unless he knows what he's talking about. And I started to think, well, I mean, that's a very serious mistake for her to make. That's not right.
Well, I mean, you and I probably shouldn't speculate as to what he meant, but that was my interpretation of what he said. Okay, and I could be very wrong in my interpretation.
We agree on that.
Right? But one thing that I want to say that forget about how complex it is. If it's complex for all countries, not just ours. But I highlighted the fact that we are exceptional in terms of how large our errors and omissions item is. So as far as complexity goes, which country could be more complex in their balance of payments than China, for example, which has Belt and Road Initiative, which has the largest exports in the world, and their errors and omissions item is not as big as ours relative to their GDP and relative to their population, okay? So yes, it's complex, but we are still exceptional in that regard, so we know we have a problem. The other thing I want to highlight is back in 2000 and I want to say 2013 or something like that, you know, when the IMF comes to Trinidad to do its Article 4 review, they meet with the Bankers Association. And I remember clearly attending this meeting where they said, this is a problem. And you all at the banks, can you all explain to us what's happening? Because it was, the errors and omissions item was small, Karen, before 2011. It was small, it was an error, it was a rounding error, which is what it's supposed to be, right? And all of a sudden it became large, and it was large for a couple of years. And so the IMF called us banks in and said, something's happening here. Can you all help us understand what's happening here? And I remember we sat for hours and we all talked. I mean, all the banks were represented, not just economists. You had bankers and accountants in the room. And basically the sum total of that conversation was, we report all of our foreign currency transactions to the central bank. All. That has not changed. So if there is the banks, right? And banks are required to. So if all of the foreign exchange transactions coming in and leaving are all captured by the banks and reported to the central bank, Karen, how could $2 billion not be accounted for every year? Consistently, it's negative, and consistently, it's large. It tells you that something else is happening, and I don't know what that is. Like I said, there's statistical error, and then there's transactions that are meant to be undocumented, right? And the question is, which one is larger? And if whichever it is, it has to be fixed. And are the authorities saying that, yes, they recognize it as a problem and they're going to fix it, and here's how they're going to fix it? I don't get that. I don't get that sense. It's been, 12 years, right, that we've had this problem. And so for the average person, understand that foreign exchange is being mismanaged. The foreign exchange regime is being mismanaged in our country, and this is one manifestation of it. I was looking through some articles about in countries that also have this problem, and they did research on what they explained it to be.
Yeah.
And there was one in Nigeria, for example, where they said large and negative variable items can be indicative of capital flight, especially in the face of pending devaluation or anticipated depreciation of the currency, and of uncontrolled outflows to bypass exchange controls. That was a Nigerian paper. It went on to say some illicit reasons have been offered for the need to use this statistical discrepancy, the errors and omissions, to explain illegal transactions that have only one entry where such transfer is legitimate, meaning the inflow is legitimate, but the outflow isn't.
Okay, can I, just because, again, it's the teaching me only.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just teaching me. Because me trying to understand. If I don't understand it, then how could I try to explain it? And we have a new person join us, and she said, yes, Scotia, their correspondent bank is Bank of America. So
usually Citibank, Bank of America, Bank of Wells Fargo, all of those. Yeah.
But that was a big that was something. As you said, I'm not casting blame on anybody, but I'm saying that was a very important piece of information to leave out. Okay. Now, when you're talking, one of the things they showed you, if I could use, I thought it was a good example actually, and then they started to tell you that it was for a long time, and you can go on about it. When I say go on, you can really talk about it in far more detail, but I do have a good many examples from that same article that I read. They said that for a long time, because there are a lot of, from what I learned, they have about 20 accounts that make a balance of payment. Not only the three main ones that we know about. Rich, we don't want, you said we're not going to harass people with all the details. But the most important one is the current account, which is the balance of trade, okay? But another one that's very important, actually, because from what my understanding, and you can correct me, the financial account, because it seems like the financial account is the account that really helps with the money laundering and the hemorrhaging of our money out of the country. Because the financial account, if I understand it, does not have money. It doesn't deal with money. It deals with the special drawing rights from the United States. It deals with our foreign exchange reserves. It deals with grants. In other words, it deals with things that you could probably hide a little bit, as opposed to balance of trade is when you're really trading with countries, right? And they seem to be indicating, if you want to look at an account, that's just from my reading, is that I think if the one that you wanted to pay the most attention to is that one you call financial accounts. But this is the example I feel, hopefully, if you don't mind me using it, because it helped me to understand it, right? It helped me to understand it. And it's a positive thing in the sense of saying why it is so difficult to get the errors and omissions account correct every year. And that's why the IMF understands that. But you can't have big, large amounts, and it can't be going something wrong.
2 to 3% of GDP is acceptable.
So they gave you an example. This is the example that I got, which I found was very helpful, right? Because the central bank, when they tried to explain, and they did not do a very good job of explaining, in my respectful opinion, talking about timeliness of getting information. And what's the other stupid? Sorry, no disrespect to the central bank. Sometimes I'm a little bit too open-minded. I'm thinking with the credit card. They say we don't know how the money spent outside. When people use their credit card, and there are people who have credit card. My credit card might be cut, and I might only have 5,000. But there are people who credit card that cut and they still have $1 million on it, right?
But Karen, even if you classify credit card, whatever you classify it is, you have a recorded outflow. Whether it is you went and bought shoes and
why
clothes,
they stay in the car, this is what they say.
Because they are using the problems around classifying the transaction as to explain errors and omissions. That does not explain why it's so large. It explains why capital flight, for example, is recorded in the trade balance when it really should be in the financial or the capital account. right? We
Okay.
do have a misclassification for capital flight, and we know we have a lot of capital flight with
I find it
under
something like
invoicing and all of that.
Right. That's what they talked
But
a lot about.
my point is, it does not matter if the transaction was you're buying apples or you're buying shoes. It
Yes.
really does not matter, because if you captured the outflow correctly in the terms of the dollar amount, whether
Yes.
you have it classified as apples or oranges or shoes or hats, it will be captured and will not end up in the errors and omissions item. The
Okay.
problem is not how the outflow is classified. The problem is the outflow even reflected? And that is why we have this error, because the outflow of $2 billion is not
And
reflected.
that is what part of the explanation thing, the example I got for.
I'm dying to hear your example. Please tell me.
Oh God, but you must remember, I am a lay person. Okay. We talk to lay people, right?
I know
You
there
know,
was an example in one of the papers I read about a helicopter or a plane. You pay for a plane, and
yes,
it takes 4 years
yeah,
to build the plane. So
that's
you
the
pay.
one. It was in the papers, but I didn't read
Oh,
it.
okay. I didn't see it in the
I did.
newspaper.
I read it from the article. Remember, I told
Right.
you the thing,
Yeah.
and that was
On
a very.
an oil rig is the same.
You
Like, you
use that
pay for the
example.
oil
You do it
rig.
then.
Yeah. So you pay for the plane in this
Right.
year, in 2024, but you don't get
Right.
delivery of the plane until 2026 or so.
Right.
So
Okay.
the customs record of the item being delivered to your country will not show up until 2026, right?
Right.
But the outflow of the money shows up now in 2024 because you paid for it now. My
Right.
point is, if that was the biggest part of our problem, then in 1 year you will see a big outflow, and the next year you will see a big inflow, and you will see things going up and down. The fact
But
is, we have consistent negative, large errors and omissions item, which
you know
tells
what they
you.
say? Well, you know what
Mhm.
else they say though, besides what you just said, that you won't pay until 20. They said it could be the form of loans, and loans that carry costs and interest. And then the ownership can change. In the meantime, in the 2 year period, ownership could change hands, and you could have both foreign and domestic participants. And then you have timing problems. It's supposed to be delivered in 2026. It's not delivered in 2026. You have to finish your balance of payment for the year, at the end, whatever the year is, and you still have money outstanding. And guess what? What I gathered from what they were saying, they jump in with the errors and omissions to close the gap, and then people forget all about it, and it becomes compounding. And they said it's called hidden. They said what has happened and what the IMF is paying more attention to that they didn't pay attention to before is the misuse of errors and omissions to hide. But they talk, for example, under invoicing or over invoicing. So they bring in something into the country, and they over
Yeah,
invoices say worth more,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
then when they send something out of the country, these are under invoice or invoicing. So you can't even rely on the data, and there's nobody there giving you surveillance to make sure that the data that is entered so a lot of under invoice and over invoicing looks to be a large part of it. And another large part of it is the timing issue, how long you have to pay, and therefore where do you classify it? And it looks like they take advantage of all of this. It looked like to me. I mean, I just try to understand
Let
this
me
thing.
ask a question here. What good does it do the authorities
Mhm.
to have a large errors and omissions item? To
It's a
hide
lot of
things?
it's a lot of friends to take out money.
Well, then that is the point I'm trying to make, and maybe I just didn't make it
I know
properly.
you are
The
making it.
point I was trying to make is that it doesn't matter whether the inflow and the outflow is classified as any item. The fact is, the banks are capturing the official flows. Now, if the money has left via wire transfer, whether it's an illicit flow, Karen, or an legitimate transaction, it is captured by the banks and it is reported to the central bank. So somewhere in there, it's being, hidden, as you say.
But suppose you're uninvoiced or over-invoiced.
Okay, somebody asked me that question. Somebody asked me about the crypto question too. Let's say you are like you say, I have to pay this bill for $1 million for all the avocados. But
Right.
really and truly is only $500,000 of avocados you import. And the next $500,000 you send in abroad to buy a house.
Right. Okay, that's a good example.
Did you not wire the 1 million?
Yes, you did.
Okay. So the bank has the record that you wired 1 million. What you do with it over there, once it reach over there, is not their business. But they have a record that you wired 1 million. That goes into the balance of payments account in the current account under trade. Now, really, half of it should be trade and half should be the capital account because you invested in a property. But it ends up in the current account because you have it categorized as trade. The point I was making, it does not matter the classification. The bank has the data that you wired $1 million.
You know
that
what
should end up in the balance of payments account.
Right, I understand what you're saying, and if anybody don't understand what Mala Dukaran is saying, then I don't know what school you're going to, right? Because we understand what you're saying, but I guess what is bothering me a lot, what bothers me a lot, maybe because I was in government, maybe that's what bothers, maybe that's the dissonance for me. You know, when I read this thing, I mean, I guess I was so kind of like shocked, really. I mean, you know, okay, this is what I really think now. I think that the corruption in this country has a level of sophistication that people do not understand. I think, and we don't understand, because when we look in left, something going right. When we look in right, something going left. And when
the fact that you have flows like this that nobody is taking note of tells you that they deliberately wanted to continue.
This is what they say. And they say errors such as negligence, fraud, or it's usually, I mean, this is from an international entity, yeah? I mean, so they're not talking just about us, it's not us. FATF said this. FATF said the under-invoicing of goods and services and the multi-invoicing of goods and services over and under shipments of goods serves for false description of goods and services. I guess what they're trying to say is I agree with what you're saying. We agree with what you're saying. We understand what you're saying. I hope. You say no matter how you call it, apples, pears, oranges, grapes, you could call it whatever name you want to call it, right? At the end of the day, something is wrong that we have such a high errors and omissions number, and it is way too high, and it cannot be just by chance. It just cannot be best by chance.
100%.
Right? And even though people recognize it's a complex thing, you can't just tell me complex and then I must shut up and do ask another question, right? Like, to me, this is what I got out of it. And I may be wrong, and I'm free to make a comment because I'm not accusing anybody, but I'm making a general statement. I have come to the conclusion, and in this country, the people who are involved in corruption, and I'm not talking about the boys shooting up out on the streets, which everybody could see. The people who are involved in corruption in this country have a level of sophistication, a level that are 5 years ahead of you. They are 5 years ahead of you. And by the time you even think, and you know what they have said? They've said that when the mistake, let me see from what I read, when many mistake is made, especially if it's small or it's not paid attention to, it gets compounded every year when you don't pick it up. And every year and every year.
Because it becomes a loophole to exploit.
But, and this is, I mean, sorry, Sandra, but I find you should be ashamed of yourself. Because when I read this article, they are telling you, just like what you said, Marla, you're not going to solve all. You're just not going to solve all, right? But there's so much you can do to solve some of what's going on. And for it to be so high and to be so consistent, you cannot tell me is my credit card and time differences. You cannot tell me that in 2024 and expect me to swallow that in a country that is rife with corruption. Look, they just I didn't read the article yet. I didn't read the article yet, but I have a feeling it had to do with that request for proposal. I'm not going off point, but just the level of corruption. I don't know if you knew about the houses, this Chinese construction company, and NH came and said, yes, AGC did all the right things under the regulation of, the legislation, but when it came to request for proposal, they wanted to see what the request for proposal said and whether the Chinese company complied with the request for proposal. And from what I read in today's papers, they was building a whole set more houses than the contract said was supposed to be built. What I read, I just read what I read in the papers. What I read in the papers, they were building 644 units, and it was only supposed to be 240 something units. Something was, the corruption is so invidious in this country, And when I looked at this, honestly, Marla, I mean, it probably is, you're so used to it, it doesn't, shock you or anything like that. But I guess errors and omissions was something I never really had to deal with because, you have your whole division that deals with technical stuff. But when I saw what you said, I said, now she could say something like that. A real serious statement for her to make. And she stuck there too.
Well, Karen, I've been saying it for years.
You have.
I've been writing about this for years. And like you just alluded to, it's a problem every country has, but ours is clearly an exceptionally large problem. And the fact that nobody sees it as a problem and nobody's, seems to be bothered means that it's convenient to somebody to leave it this way. You were the one who said some time ago that Trinidad is a narco state. I read an article that specifically talks about illicit financial flows. And the other thing I want to also mention that is very important, because context is everything.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a country where the foreign currency regime is basically one that's mismanaged, in the earlier interview this morning, I highlighted an article, the Article 4 of the IMF back in June of 2016 that talked about the fact that our country was in breach of Article 8, where you're not supposed to have these dual exchange rate regimes where we have de facto controls, meaning we did away with foreign exchange controls years ago, but somehow our government, without passing legislation, has just reintroduced de facto controls around how foreign exchange is accessed. Mm-hmm. And when you control things like this, first of all, you politicize it, right? And we saw some of that with the rapid dismissal of the last governor and the lawsuit that came out of that, where he made statements that, caused some trouble. The point being that if you did not have these controls in place, and if you weren't managing and controlling the supply of the foreign exchange and the price, and you weren't creating a black market, then you will not create a system where people are incentivized to do this. But the fact is, consecutive governments in this country have created the ripe conditions for people to want to buy, hold, and send away every US dollar they could get their hands on. You have created the conditions for a black market. You have created the conditions for capital flight. And so don't be surprised that the errors and omissions item is large and unexplained, because people are trying to get money out every way they can. So the context is it's a perfect storm for what we're seeing with our errors and omissions. They created these scenarios and the conditions for it to happen. And like you said, there's so much corruption, so much illicit financial flows. We're the only country on earth, apart from Vanuatu, blacklisted twice by the EU. And I'm the first one who will always say, the EU is very unfair. But we know we have problems with money laundering. We know we have a problem with the way that the foreign exchange is being managed, or I should say mismanaged. And so that errors and omissions item is large and negative because people are incentivized by the authorities to take money, to take US dollars out of our country. And until they fix those things, we will continue to have problems.
So this is the politician we're going to answer in a way. Okay? And and I'm very open-minded to what you will say in response. Okay, so be very clear about that. I hope I'm very clear about that. You know, maybe I draw a difference between, which is both are wrong. Both are wrong. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. The capital flight, which I know, I understand. I mean, not say I knew. Okay, I can't say I knew because I do follow people to the bank and see what they do, right? But I do know that a lot of people will not leave their money in Trinidad. They have their money in banks abroad in the United States.
100%, yes.
Right? Okay, now there's that. Now you are going to tell me. I'm going to leave it to you to give me an answer to that. That what I consider maybe there's no real difference, and I'm making a difference in my mind. There are that group of people who do not have confidence in the economy. They see how much debt we are taking on. They see the foreign exchange position. They see the oil and gas sector situation. They see the mismanagement. They see all the indicators are so bad, and the crime adding to it, that it has not gotten better, it keeps getting worse. So they take the decision, this is what I'm just saying, that look, let me get my money out of here, not because I want to make money off of my money, but I want to safeguard the money I have. Okay, so there are people who are not doing it to make money off of their.
They're not doing anything illegal. They're acting rational. They're acting rationally.
And their motivation is not to beat the system, but to protect whatever they have for themselves and their children, just in case the market crashes and they have nothing and the banks come here. Okay, so that's that one.
Which is not illegal. There's nothing illegal about capital flight. There's nothing illegal about
what about the money launderers?
Well, that is illegal, and that is illicit.
That's what I wanted you to. That's what I'm at. Now, what's the difference to you with the money launderer? And that's why when you made the statement, and I'm only saying it because I consider my family keeps on telling me, take your money out of any little bit US they have, take it out. And I have a lot of difficulty in doing that. Not because maybe I can't, but maybe because I feel I'm being disloyal, which is a stupid reason, I guess, but that's a stupid reason I have. But there are people who are involved in money laundering. And what is the difference? What is a money launderer compared to people who are scared that their money will be
There's a big difference. So one is legal. It is perfectly legal for you to take your US dollars that you've earned doing legal things and take it wherever you want to take it. There's nothing illegal about that.
Right.
And you will wire it through your bank, which is completely all recorded and all documented. Money laundering is when you are trying to move money that has been earned via some illegal activity. That's different. Now, that errors and omissions item, some of it will be explained by the legitimate capital flight, meaning legitimate funds that people, want to buy a house abroad, or they want to take their money abroad, or they want to pay for their children's education, and they over invoice so that they can get the money out. That's not illegal. It's an error if you if you lie on a form. Well, then that's illegal, because sometimes you have to fill out forms and say what is the purpose. If you lie on a form, well, then that's a lie, right? But my point, I think the problem with our errors and omissions item is a combination of capital flight that is legitimate, let's say, as well as some that's not. I'm sure there is a mix of all of that. But my point is, and I hope your listeners, because I have to run just now. I hope your listeners take. Well, we've been here for an hour. The point I want to make is that it can be all of those things. The fact of the matter is, ours is the largest per capita in the world. We have a problem, right? No matter what is the complexity, what is the misclassification, everybody's got this problem. And I just want to...
So what's the answer then?
The answer is the authorities are supposed to deal with it. The Auditor General, I would encourage and urge and plead with the Auditor General when you are doing your audits, take a closer look. Take a closer look when you're auditing the central bank. Take a closer look, especially at the reserves and the way the foreign currency is managed. Take a closer look at the government's fiscal accounts as it relates to foreign currency. A couple of things I want to leave your listeners with. If we did not lose $25 billion since 2011, our foreign reserves today could have been $30 billion US dollars. Right now, it's 5 or 6 billion. And by the way, Karen, if our government did not borrow, and if our government did not draw down on the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, our reserves right now would be less than 200 million. We would have 1 week of import cover, which is a balance of payment crisis. We
Dr.
would have.
Dr. Arjun said about 2 months ago, 400 and something million. So you're wrong in the same.
Yes, we would have been having a balance of payments crisis right now if our government wasn't heavily borrowing. They just did one recently, heavily borrowing in US dollars and drawing down on the Heritage and Stabilization Fund.
But did you read the Minister of Finance's affidavit when he, for the establishment of the TTRA, when he responded to the issue of why he has to collect taxes, and he was talking about the huge fiscal deficit, and he admitted in that affidavit that the lending agencies, not only lending agencies, the Standard & Poor's, the sovereign debt,
the rating
agencies have said, unless you get your fiscal, I guess, in some level of balance in a very short period of time, we are going to have to downgrade you. He said they have told us. He said it in his affidavit. He said they have told us that the government cannot continue to borrow money to finance debt. And I guess our current account, we cannot. And if we continue to do that, we are going to be downgraded. So it's not that he don't know that, You're not telling. Matter of fact, I feel I could give a speech and read his affidavit. And if I read his affidavit, my affidavit will give the people of Trinidad and Tobago the reason why they should never, never, never allow those people to run this country again.
And on that note, I have to have dinner. It's that time of day for me. It's after 8 o'clock where I am.
Thank you very much. The show goes on a little longer, but I'll hold on with David because David is so sweet, and I hope I get other people to join us. And I thank you very, very much for joining us. I think you have made your point very clear. I mean, if you don't understand what she said, well, I mean, you have your ears clogged up. You have to have your ears clogged up. She's not getting into the nitty-gritty. I'm sure she has her views on it. I'm sure she could give us some explanations deeper than she has done today. But what she has left you with, which any man in the street can understand what she's saying, no country over such an extended period of time can have accumulated errors of omissions to balance your payment of over $25 billion over 2011 and 2012, 2020, whatever the period is, putting us in the unenviable position of being with about 4 or 5 countries. And for that to happen, it can't just be the explanations that the central bank has given us. No, anyone has given us. There's more in the mortar than the pestle, and there's more, and the political will is not there. And we as a people have to understand that is money that's leaving the country that should have been invested in our country. Is that fair, Marla?
I could not have said it better.
You sure?
The next time I have a summary to write, Karen, I'm calling you. Thank you. You're better than AI. You're better than AI. I love it. Excellent. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. I could only have done that by the way. I'm going to let you go now because I know you want to have it in. But I just want to tell you, the only reason I could have done that is because of what you said. And that's the truth.
And
because before errors and omissions came on on the screen 2 weeks ago, I don't even think anybody knew what errors and omissions were.
And I appreciate that you have helped tremendously to ventilate this issue and get more eyes and ears on it. And I want to encourage you and everybody listening, we all have a responsibility to hold leaders to account in our country. We've elected them to make our lives better. Hold them to account. That's our duty, to hold them to account. I thank you, Karen. I really appreciate it.
Have a
And,
lovely dinner. I'm
thank
envious
you.
of you. I envy you. I envy the type of dinner you may be having, but I shall say no more. No, I shall say no more. I shall say no more. I just say it's envy completely. But have a wonderful evening, and thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being our guest.
Thank you. Take care. Take care.
You take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
So, David,
Yeah.
you and me, and the people who we always try to come and join us. I see I have a new person, and thank you for giving me that information. I don't know if you want me to call out your name. You know, sometimes people may not like you to do that, but what it means that you were listening, because the whole argument was about the correspondent bank, and I didn't know that because it was Scotia. I didn't realize, which I mean, I should have realized, but you made a good point. The correspondent bank is, if you don't have a correspondent bank, you cannot move money out of the country or into the country, because they are like the barrier. And that's what we're not arguing Venezuela point, because that is not it is our issue. And maybe because Marla has left, I thought earlier than I had anticipated, but she's had a long day with us, she's had a long day with us. And I think she has in her far more she's been far more, what should I say, not the word is not gracious, is the more careful thing. But I also am careful because I don't want anybody suing me for defamation, right? And I certainly don't use the language of our prime minister. You know, any prime minister could use that language. You know, he already think he win the elections, or he can't help himself. Something going wrong. You either cannot help yourself, because if you could go in public and speak like that, and you want me to respect you, somebody wrote an article this weekend, and actually it's one of the columnists, and I'm not following what he said. I felt that about him, and I was glad to read it, because that's exactly what I feel. And I have no preference for Ghana, you know. But you see, Dr. Ishran Ali, boy, that making me feel proud. Now, I know he could talk hard now because they're in a good position. But regardless of whether you're in a good position or other, there are people who will suck up still and still be corrupt and still not stand up to the speak truth to power, as they like to say, you know. And he speak truth to power, and he let them know this is a new world they're dealing with. We're not going to sit down here in 2024 and have you dictate the pace for us, and we sit down there and take it. And he was really so the article I read, Ralph Mirage wrote it. He gave Dr. Ishran Ali an A, and guess what he gave Dr. Dr. Rowley? Dr. Rowley, I think you earned it, huh? You really earned it. F. And F, not an F meaning F for failure, just in case one's mind goes wandering. And you know, and he earned it. And you know, since I don't want to prosecute or persecute the problem of the errors and omissions, I think what Marla Ducran did was try to show that you have to balance the accounts at the end of the year, whatever that year is. And the errors and omissions account, there are a lot of accounts, you know. She said there's the current account, which is the main one, which is the balance of trade, which is with the rest of the world. It also gives the rest of the world an indication on where the economy is, do you know how healthy the economy is, and whether you want to invest in our economy. So it's a very important account in the balance of payment, because surprisingly, the balance of payment has about 12 to 15 accounts, right, that are subdivided. You know, so you have the most important one, for me to continue just a little bit, the most important one as far as trade with the rest of the world is the current account. We rely on it because if I use a definition, since left here, luckily I do try to prepare. I do try to, because I love the challenge. I love the challenge of learning. And guess what? I love the challenge, although my poor grandson doesn't appreciate it as much as I like him to. But I love the challenge of teaching. I think he's outgrown me teaching him too much. You know, you get kind of tired of me teaching him all the time. But it doesn't stop me though. But the balance of payments is really is a statistical measurement, and it's statistical in numbers. It's dealing with numbers, right? Statement that summarizes your transactions of your country in a fixed period. I think there are 4 quarters and then the year with the rest of the world, and the outflows, which is where you make your money, right? And they pay you for it. And the inflows is where people pay you for the goods that you traded with them. What I didn't get a chance to say to Marla Dukaran, where we may have had a difference of opinion, and it may be, as I said, one, because I was, politics is not static, eh? I mean, we know that. You just have to know what's going on in Trinidad. I don't have to be even clearer than that. You just have to see what's going on in Trinidad with leadership issues to show that if you went back 15 years, some people were gods. Now, look at how things change. That's the world. That is the world. That's the world. So, and politics is definitely no difference. And I give Mr. Dukaran credit for this. I did my MBA. And when I was doing it, one of the things he kept saying to us is you have to balance the accounts. The job is to try to balance it. Try to balance it, because if you don't balance it, you're going to find yourself either inflation, cost of living going up. It's going to create a lot of problems. You're always trying to do that. So to come back to what Marla Dukran had left us with, she said the other accounts are not so important, but they are important, I think, anyhow, because from when I started reading, so I would just pass on my knowledge that I gained. When you're dealing with the balance, when you're dealing with the current account, it's broken up into other accounts, but the main one is the balance of trade, and that's where you're trading with other parts of the world, and the world is seeing how you're doing. If you're doing well, if you have a positive balance, which means you are making more when you trade with the rest of the world, and the world is making from you. I love my little history. That's why England tried to mash up China with the Opium Wars. Why Karen Tesheira like history so much? I can't tell you. But I could just tell you that is one of the reasons why they had a problem with India too, where they took all their looms that they use, their silk looms to make silk, and destroyed them. Because England, all due respect to England, they do not make tea, they do not make silk, and China, not the country, but China, the dishes comes from the country China. And they were losing so much in the balance of trade that they were importing so much from China because they had nothing to export, you see. So everything they had to export is what they took from other countries. Is the truth. They did that to India too, right? And what they took from other countries, that's the truth. And that's why they started that Opium War and forced them to trade and to buy opium, and took a country and a large part of a country and created from the people who were drug addicts, who would spend their whole day smoking in a drug den, doing nothing because the balance of trade was not in their favor. So don't think balance of trade not important. Balance of trade very important. It was important to England when they had the Opium Wars. Now I know I'm simplifying it because there wasn't only one Opium War, about 2 or 3, and I knew they focused on certain cities where they had more of the trade involved. But they had the silks came from China. They were making silks. The China came from China. The level of sophistication of China and what England had to offer back in trade could not compare. And so too with India. Destroyed the people's looms and created, everybody must have read that book when they were or had been exposed to with these child labor, that English author. What's his name? Remember his name? David, everybody had to read him.
Mm-mm.
When you were little, we only used to read English books. We didn't know that about ourselves.
Mhm.
And they still don't want us to know anything about ourselves,
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
Right? But we have to fight against that. But he wrote about the child labor, which he, of course, eventually had to outlaw, and the workhouses. These children living in workhouses, and what were they working on? Factories, because they destroyed the British. At one time, India had one of the fifth largest economies in the world. They destroy the economy. So I don't know why they like to boast that they do anything. They're not supposed to boast because it's all, I'm sorry, England. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But the truth is the truth, and the truth will come out. The truth will come out. So that have to do with the balance of trade. So it's not off the point. It's because they I don't know, English, the English have tea. And British people do this like me, because I have British friends. I grew up among British people, and I don't have, it's nothing personal. But the same way you could have your say and write all your books about Sir Francis Drake and talk and make all these people heroes, and we have accepted that as if it were the truth. We have a right to give our truth too, because we have a right to write our books now, okay, and give our history. And if what I'm saying is not true, there's a guy that is on TikTok, a very brilliant man. He was doing a lecture at the University of Cambridge, and he talked about how they went in there and broke up all their looms. You remember the British Trading Company? It was whatever they call it. I think a British Trading Company. It was not a company. It was effectively England operating there. And today, now what you see going on in England, where they're telling all these people from Pakistan and so on. I'm not taking any sides, but something wrong. What you went in people country for first? What you went in the people country for first? Why you tell them not to wear their clothes that they're used to wearing? Why you tell them they must speak English? Why you tell them they must have an education as English education? Why you must tell them they must eat English food? Why is it okay for you to do that? But when you colonize them, no, nobody tell you to go and colonize them. Nobody force your hand. You went to your own country, Europe, of how many countries they made up. You fight each other so much. You fight and fight each other to the extent that the queen related to the king, because they use marriage to stop each other from fighting each other. You're tired, change borders. You're tired, change borders. You're tired, fight each other. You fight each other so much, you have to go out to other countries and fight them and take away from them. Right? I mean, oh my God, face the truth. We're not stupid anymore. You see, once we start getting education, you can't fool us. Nobody is full of hate, but you can't come and do that and don't expect that you don't pay a price. If you colonize me, and take away my wealth and try to take away my way of life and what I know and how I dress and how I talk and how I educate myself, and you want to strip me of all of that, and then I come in your country and hold on to my traditions, and then you want me to go back home.
Hmm.
Why I must go? Where I must go back home for? I never tell you to come by me first.
Hmm.
I'm saying that because once I was in England, listen, this is
Yeah.
not easy English, because I have a lot of very close family that are English, by the way. So let me just make that clear. I have a lot of family in England that are English, married English. So please, I'm not, and there are a lot of English people who are against it and who will fight against it and do not support it. Okay, so I want to make that very clear too. But I never forgot. I never forgot somebody standing there, he called it a soapbox in Hyde Park. And somebody told the Englishman, "We are here because you were there." It's as simple as that. We are here because you were there. If you didn't come there, we wouldn't be here.
Hmm.
We'd be right in our country. But now the tables turn, and someone said to me, if you went in British people, I want to go to Britain, so don't think, but you have to face the truth and the freedom, it liberates you, and it liberates you. They say if you go in a museum of natural history in England,
Hmm.
Why not take out all the things that they take from these people country? I don't think they gave them as gifts. They
Hmm.
might tell you they were gifts, but I don't feel if they were gifts, right? And you take them out, they might have nothing there left. And let me just say one more thing. I know I'm going off the point, but to watch Marla left and have time, and you have time with me. And anybody join me, and you don't have to agree with me. And listen, this is not about just liking people. It's you just have to open your eyes. And when you open your eyes to your reality, you don't vex with anybody. You just know the truth. Knowledge is power. That's all it is. It's not about disliking anybody. It's about, don't tell me to go back home. Don't tell me to go back home. I never tell you to come by me.
Hmm.
Am I amusing you, David?
Of course, I've learned so much during this program because one time I had nothing to do at home and just relaxing. I like to look at documentaries and
Mm,
news channels and stuff. I
right.
had to look at movies and things. So I pounced on this documentary where they were talking about the colonization of India and some of
Mm-hmm.
the facts that was shown. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like my bottom jaw hit the floor because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that England had such an impact on the way they colonized the Indians the Indian people. It was very brutal.
They didn't succeed with plenty, yeah? But they tried their best.
Yeah, I think it was a very brutal way of trying
Very
to,
brutal.
yeah, and
And yeah, and now England is under economic hardship. Now
mhm,
they have lost all of their wonderful colonies upon which the sun never set,
mhm,
right? It's setting all over the world.
mhm,
And now that the people that you colonize are educated and are not prepared to accept that anymore, right? The fact of the matter is a new world order, and we all have to accept it's a new world order. You
yes,
had your time. I suppose you enjoyed yourself during that period of time. I have to imagine you did.
mhm.
But now you're facing a new world, and it's all, and we have to understand, and they have to understand that those days are over.
Karen,
Those
I
days
have
are over.
somebody on the line here. Good
Mhm.
afternoon. Okay, the person hung up.
But they
Yeah.
mustn't hang up. You must, if you, I don't mean to tell you you mustn't hang up. You can hang up if you want. But
Yeah.
don't feel, what I'm saying, don't be shy to talk
Hmm.
because, it's all about education and, understanding, having understanding. There was a point I was going to make. And of course, when I say these things, I try very much to get the data. I don't like people who have a axe to grind or are not wanting to be balanced because once you are not balanced in what you're saying, you
Hmm.
lose credibility. And I
Hmm.
never want to lose credibility, but I do want to say what people need to understand that when they tell you go back to where you came from, you tell me to go back where I came from. I talk about like in America.
Hmm.
These people who are slaves, they're there 500 years. You know, when you came on Ellis Island about 200 years ago and couldn't read and write, nothing wrong with that. You came from Ireland, you came from Sicily, you came from wherever you came from and couldn't read and write, and you
Hmm.
went and lived in your communities and your communities supported you. Nothing wrong with that. And you did well because America is the land of opportunity. My family has benefited a lot from America. I have many family members who are American citizens. And America's a great land, a wonderful land of opportunity. But when you want to tell me to go America where I came from, I have to tell you how long you in America? 200 years? I have 500 years. Who do you think is supposed to come back? And if
Hmm.
you want to really have that argument, have the argument with the First Nation people.
Yes.
Have that with them and then ask them who should go back home.
Hmm.
I don't like that talk when they tell you go back from where you come from. Go back from where I came from. No time to go back from where I came from. And by the way, I love America a lot because I think America is a great land of opportunity. I have many family members who love America as much as they love Trinidad, maybe even more because they're born there. They've lived most of their life there, and America has given them opportunities that a small country like ours could not have given them. So I don't want anyone to take away from what I'm saying that And there are many people in America who do not agree with that way of thinking. There are many people who do not think. But when you read these things, it does make you think that people shouldn't say those things to others because, we are one world, one globalized world, and we have to live together. And there are countries in this world that have nuclear power. Blow up, if one of them decides to blow up, we all gone.
That's right. I have a call on the line, Karen. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Shera.
Good afternoon.
I listened to some of your conversation with Miss Dukaran. You
Mhm.
know, and it is instructive that in her article, when she wrote that article, that she pinpointed that this issue with the net errors and omissions started from 2011. So that would mean for 5 years of the People Partnership Administration that this would have been the genesis of this issue. What worries me is that we changed governments in 2015, and it it was left to continue. So it says to me in my thinking, it says to me if it is that it there was a 5 years of a previous administration and now we're looking at or 9 years of another administration and it has been left there to continue. It tells me there are systemic problems in the reporting of this net errors and omissions. And I can't understand why it is that I was surprised that Dr. Farrell didn't actually go more in depth in his article as to trying to explain,
Mhm.
or probably he just couldn't explain. Or and the central bank, I keep saying this, the central bank has a lot to answer for in this issue. Has a lot to answer for.
Mhm.
And I am surprised that I'm glad that you brought it up again because this seems as if it's just another story and we pass that and we going and we just going keep going down the road again, kicking the can down the road and people not understanding how serious our foreign exchange issue is in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't think the population really truly understands that, you know.
No,
If you
they
take
don't.
a shower in your bathroom, you're spending foreign exchange because the soap you're using and the chemicals that you the water that you're bathing with is
True.
foreign exchange. And I
Mhm.
hope I really think Trinidad and Tobago really being complacent, you know. We are really being complacent. This should be an issue where the authorities are compelled by the population to give an answer because we want an answer. And I understand some of it have to do with capital flight and some of it have to do with money laundering. And all, I could understand that. But there's an explanation needed because this has been happening since 2011. Have a good day, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
I,
I want to say first, I don't think 2011. I may be misrepresenting her, but I do not think she was saying that 2011 was the beginning because when I had to go and look up balance of payments, I saw they had about 20 different accounts, and those accounts have been around all along. What has happened, and when you read the article that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it helped me a lot because what they were saying, it was like the hidden account because nobody was paying attention to it. And the reason why she gave 2011 is I think the IMF started to started to accumulate the data with from country to country as how much is deposited in every year in the errors and omissions account. So the 2011 has nothing to do, I don't think, to do with our politics as much as the fact that the IMF decided that this was an account that they had not been paying attention to and it was being used more and more for money laundering and capital flight. And you cannot underestimate that because that is at the heart of a lot of our corruption. So I think that is what she meant, in my respectful opinion, with regard to the date that she gave. You raised a lot of other the other points about regards to the foreign exchange. You are right. You are right about the fact that I do not think that people recognize it. But if I could use a example that I think most people could really kind of can relate to, if you are a parent running a family and you really know you're in trouble, you owe in the marish and the parish, as we like to say, but you are trying to protect your children and your wife from the reality of it. You are juggling accounts, juggling paying this one to pay that one, paying this one to pay that one. And meanwhile, your children are none the wiser because they're still going to their parties, they're still doing whatever because you don't want them not to be able to do it. Now, your reasoning for doing that is as a parent. Their reasoning for doing that, the government, is to win your votes and to come back into power. That's all they care about. They want to come back into power. So how do they juggle accounts? They're doing it by borrowing to the hilt. Mr. Imbert's you have to read Mr. Imbert's witness statement where he had to admit the reality, how bad it is in the country. You can't get it better than from the Minister of Finance. So the reason why I think people don't know, to answer your question, is one way of keeping the truth from your children, let's say, because we are the children of the country. And if you want to say he's the prime minister and he has his ministers and he running the company, we are the shareholders, however you want to call it. All I think we are more than shareholders because it's such trust and confidence. We are more than that. If you want to keep the truth away from the voting public, listen, you might have the most money in this country, which I'm not saying you do have, but your vote is only one, you know. The guy who's sitting on the side of the road selling coconuts, who do have a criminal record, and taking home how much at the end of the month. Guess how much his vote worth? The same one your own is, you know. But guess who in the majority? You not in the majority, they are. And so in order to keep the truth away from you, just like the parent may want to do, the country's answer is to borrow, to borrow, to borrow. And the agencies have told them, which is what Marla Dukran said, they have warned them they cannot continue to carry fiscal deficits, meaning, I know you know, but I'll just say it, the difference between your revenue, what your country makes. Revenue is not how much your country makes, but the taxes the country collects, right? Between the revenue and the expenditure on all the different things that you spend is on different ministries. They have told the government, and the minister said it, that they are being told they cannot continue to borrow like they are doing because they're borrowing to keep the pretense that all is well and hope the cards will not fall collapsing on them. And that is why people are not really aware of it. And for those who are at the bottom, at the end of the income stream, who are URP and CPEP, their salaries can't mind anybody. That's why there's so much criminality in this country. And that's why this country is a corrupt country. And that is why this country is a drug country. Because you heard them say use fishing boats. I thought he was making a joke because he wanted to embarrass the government and say, look, you won't give us. He said they don't even have a boat. If you're telling me the drugs coming in from outside, and you know that they're not making of it any of the cocaine. I tired of hearing about the marijuana, and she made it illegal for a plant, per household or per person. I'm not saying marijuana not important, you know, right? But the cocaine is what is driving the economy, and you know you are importing it from outside. Stop telling me about cars. Stop telling me about the coat of arms. And stop doing all the nonsense to deflect. You should put a fence, an impenetrable fence around Trinidad and Tobago, that those who are involved in the drug trade will go elsewhere. If Tobago could tell you they want to use their fishing boats, I mean, that is laughable. If you put that in Yahoo or CNN and tell them that the head of THS say he wants to use fishing boats to help the government with the drug problem, if people will think they're making a joke, but you know why it's not a joke? And they tell them they can't do it, eh? But of course they cannot do it because they're not equipped to do it. But the point is, you have not you know exactly what the problem is. but you don't want the answer because the answer, if you put the answer, it will mash up the economy that we have going today. That is the truth. And that is, they don't like me. You don't have to like me. I didn't have to beg all you for anything. All I ask is to release the commission of inquiry into the CLF financial. I don't know why you would release it. And I don't know why you don't get somebody to come out on the pavement to say what I knew that nobody else knew. How come you never could do it? So that's why I'm not afraid to talk out. I don't want him to kill me. Eh? So if you see if you see I get poisoned or I get in an accident on the road, don't believe it. Eh?
Hmm.
Don't believe it.
So Karen, where do we go from here, or how do we correct that?
Thank you very much, caller. I really appreciated your call, and we
Mhm.
would encourage more of you to call in because I really love that call.
Yes. So as it is now, based on all what Miss Dukaran had to say, and
Yeah,
I saw a post on my phone with that same lady, but I did not know her. So
right.
as I saw her today, I just said, wow, that is the same woman
I'm
that called
moving
it.
across because I'm about to lose power. So I'm
Yeah.
moving
Okay.
across
Yeah.
another location.
Okay. Hold on, caller. Karen is just adjusting
Sure.
her system here.
Yes, I just making sure that all of a sudden I don't go blank.
Yes.
Oh Lord, just a minute. Technology and me don't agree at all, It's true. But I understand the value of it.
Yes.
But okay, I'm good now. I'm good. I'm
Yes.
good.
So
Yes, go ahead.
the caller is back on the line. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon again, sir.
Yes. Mr. Tesheira.
Yes.
Yes, the reason why I just calling back to clarify, the reason why I said 2011, right,
Yeah.
is
Hmm.
when Miss Tukaran actually said in that interview with you, she
Hmm.
said the meeting that the IMF had was in 2013. And she said that the IMF had noticed that the net errors and omissions was high for a couple of years. So I just, a couple means two.
Yeah.
That is why I
That's
went back and
America.
said,
Yes,
I
that
said
is true.
2011.
Yeah.
That is
Yes.
why I just wanted to explain that. That's why I said 2011, because she
Okay.
said the meeting that was in 2013 with the IMF.
You
Mm-hmm.
pay better
Thank you.
attention.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you so much. I need you really paying a real attention because
Yes.
that
Yeah.
sort of that slipped me. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to understand people like Mara Dukuran, people like myself. We have to be careful too, huh? We have to
Mm-hmm.
be very careful too because but then uh, we have to speak out because somebody has to speak out. So what you said about how the country's situation, you're absolutely right. And what they're hoping for, and I'll just deal with this a little bit. I deal with it on another show, but not so much on this show. And as I have you all on, Mr. Montano, always there. And I thank you, sir, for calling. And I want more of you to call, coming close to the end of the show. But um, I'm having a senior moment. Honestly, it happens to the best of us. I'm gonna
We're
see.
talking about that time period there.
Huh?
We were
Excuse me?
talking we were talking about the time period.
What time period?
The 2011.
No. I passed that. I
Oh, okay.
passed. No, I passed that thing. I mean, what I was really trying to say regarding that is that you have to be careful what you say because the first thing they're going to tell you, bring the evidence. And they know you probably can't bring the evidence because whoever could give the evidence, next day they might find out they get shot and killed or their family.
Mm,
That is
mm,
really a very corrupt country now. Oh,
mm,
what I've noticed, and I'm not going to give the example that the person used because they said it on one of those chats.
mhm,
So I'm going to disguise it as much as I can, but I don't think the message will be lost. I think to a large extent, what they're using now a lot in terms of the corruption in this country is bureaucracy. You see,
mm,
like in Jamaica, if you went to Jamaica, Jamaica still is struggling with a number of things. But for example, to start a company, it takes 3 days. They have gone up much higher on the but I know they stopped publishing the ease of doing business up for about 2 years because I think there were some issues. But if you go to look at where their ranking is, you can go up and see their ranking. A lot of the reasons why they have been able to improve, which makes sense. If I cut out, if instead of having 10 steps, I have 3 steps. It wouldn't make it, not only is it faster, but guess what? It cut out a lot of the corruption. Because if every step along the way, I have to, oh, the doctor not here today, or the person who's supposed to sign anything didn't come out today, they're coming out tomorrow. Oh, well, I told you tomorrow, but no, they're coming on vacation. What they're doing is frustrating you to the point that you give up. Now, those who have the connections, they already have the approval on it on their desk, and that is a form of corruption because you can never compete. Because one of these UNDP, I mean, I think I had a guest the other day. Oh no, it was at a talk, a panel discussion, a Hope. It was the Hope, NTA, and COP, which you all must come to, I hope, and no pun intended. And what they were trying to say is that the more that you put in red tape, so to speak, it is a form of preventing you from moving forward. And then they can say to you, look, you didn't have any ambition. How come I could make it and you could make it? How come I could make it? Look at the fishermen. Look how much thing they want the fishermen to file out to get back their money for oil spill. But they will go up on the thing and say they're giving the fishermen the money. But I wonder if any of them saw the money. Even the agro thing, which is a very good initiative. But you know what? You know, when you went to school, A for effort, F for success, results. That's what this government is. I even given them A for effort, A for optics, and F for results. That's what I would say about this government. So the example I was going to use, let's suppose the person I'm talking about, the business he was in, trying to think of something that doesn't come. Let me use avocados because that just comes to mind. So let's suppose he was producing a certain quality because WTO has standards for all these things, bananas, avocado, which is why these small countries suffer, which is why they should get their reparations because they're the ones suffering the most. You make all your money off of us and you compensate the former slave owners for losing us as slaves, but you tell us shut up. And we are the ones suffering from climate change. We are the industrialized world. We are the ones with the carbon emission. That's why Dr. Ishran Ali was good for them. He put them in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, he put them in the place. We're not taking on nonsense anymore, you know. Those days of colonialism, and that doesn't mean you're going to get aggressive. That doesn't mean you're going to become a warrior. That means you're going to stand up mano mano to them, and you're not going to talk down to me, and you're not being condescending to me because you're not smarter than me. All you had is the opportunity that I did not have. It's not the brains, but the opportunity. So the avocado example I'm using. So this man was a man and a family member for years have been making avocados according to the specifications that this government requires and have been complying with it. They stocked the shelves with their avocados as per usual. Now, this is what the person said. I could only repeat what was said. It's not avocados, that's for sure. But this part is true. Let's say within a week of putting those avocados on the shelves all over the country, they were told by Consumer Affairs that to take it off. And they said, why? We've been doing it all these years. Oh, we didn't tell you. No, we didn't. No, we didn't tell you. Oh, 6 months ago, we passed a rule that says you have to put X, Y, and Z in addition, that additional information. So the person said, but I didn't know. Nobody told me. I didn't get an email. I didn't get a text. I didn't know that. If I knew that, I would have complied. You're coming and telling me a week before. How could I comply? He said, well, you have to take it all off. And the very next week, you don't have to guess who got their avocados on the shelf. I'll leave it to you to figure it out. So you see where the bureaucracy and the corruption lies. Don't think bureaucracy and corruption and bureaucracy are one and the same thing. They could build something that you will never build. They could start a business and they could own everything in this country where you own nothing. And instead of passing on the benefits of it, you read it every time in papers. Profits declared 3.5 billion. And there are people in this country suffering. And you proud to put that in the papers. And you as a government proud to be associated with the rich getting richer. I want to tell the Prime Minister, and I told somebody else because the show is coming to an end now, just now. That is the difference. And believe you me, sir, and ladies, whoever is listening, Mr. Montano, you and Prasad, you really are very, very faithful. Eh? And the other person who didn't give me and the person who called, you almost call, eh?
Yes.
Right? But I want to tell you something. When you are the government, understand this. Understand this. Remember when you were a student and you hated all your teachers? You might have hated them. Maybe like me, I didn't like the teacher. I like one or two of them. Actually, she ended up being principal of convent. She used to be Miss Superville and she became Mrs. Crouch. She was my best teacher I ever had ever in my whole education. And I have the highest regard for her. But be that as it may, when you're a student, you see things from a particular prism. You see things from a particular way. These teachers only want to enforce this rule and that rule, and why I have to wear my uniform this way, or why I have to send in a message to my parents that I'm not coming to school, or whatever it is, whatever the rules are, and you resent it. The day you become a teacher, most you're a principal, guess what? All of a sudden, your mindset changes and you understand why. So the point I'm making is this. When you are the government, you're not the government of 2% and 3% of this country. You are not the government to make 3% of this country rich because they're rich beyond their wildest dreams. You are not in private practice and you are not the CEO or the executive of what Dupre was, chairman of a board to make that board as rich as they can be. That is, if you were that, go and work there. Go and work for them. Go and work for them. And go and make them as rich as you can with all the knowledge you would have gotten from the 9 years, 10 years that you did nothing for this country, except putting us in debt. And the dragon feed ain't opening up at all because America ain't helping Guyana. And as long, I'm sorry, not helping Venezuela. And as long as they're not helping Venezuela, we are going to suffer. But that's for another day. So you are the government of the man down at the bottom of the who only needs an opportunity. He wants a hands up. You are the prime minister of those people. You are their prime minister too. And the day that you understand that you owe it to try to help them, not by giving them a little bit to keep them quiet and make sure they come to your meetings, right? And I know about that because I was in government, right? and you order a taxi and you fill up your taxi and they come into the meeting and they raising the flag, because you know why? Because that's the URP job and that's the CPEP job. But you're not doing anything to lift them up from there. What you're making sure is the ones at the top and the ones who are your friends become richer and richer. That's what you're doing. You're not supposed to be prime minister. Go and run a company and make the company rich, because clearly that is your thing. You help AV drilling. You didn't want to take it to court. Look at that. You help your friend with the FUL, so it prepared. Let me not say you helped your friend, because next year you say you wouldn't sue me. But you wrote a letter to the then COP to ask him if he could assist with the FUL license, and you'll come and pick it up yourself. But I don't know how else you're supposed to say it. You help your other friend from Tobago with the Inez Gate. That it says not a gift. They don't give hundreds of thousands, you pay less, which of course will affect your stamp duty. But there's nothing wrong with that. You help your friend when he had to get he was quarrying on state lands and didn't have a license. Within 2 weeks, you got a license for him, right? So you know how to help your friends at the top. But you see the small man at the bottom, put him in a bus, put him in a maxi taxi, give him a jersey, give him $100, and vote for me. That's all they care about you. I telling you that. I am telling you that. I was there, and I think I've come to the end of the show. The show. We left errors and omissions, but I
Yeah.
think she gave a good explanation of errors and omissions.
Yeah.
You have to balance the accounts, and when the accounts are not balancing because of time, information, under invoicing, over invoicing, inadequate information, lack of surveillance, lack of political will, lack of all those issues that other countries have, but we seem to have it in it's such a huge amount that one can't ignore it, that something else has to be at play. And it does facilitate, among other things, money laundering, capital flight, and we, the people of this country, suffer as a result. But they do it very quietly until Miss Dukaran decided to write about errors and omission. If she didn't write about it, we would not be talking about it today.
So I know you're looking to end the show now, but what entity or which entity or who's going to create some sort of a turnaround where that is concerned? How do we do that?
Around with what?
You mean to put a halt to this sort of a
You want my opinion of this? Is an opinion that does not represent the opinion of when I say does not represent, I'm giving a personal opinion and not an opinion of the party which I actually asking me. I have thought about it, and I think the major issue in Trinidad is that there's a lack of trust and confidence in the government, whoever that government is. So they don't believe that what they say is what they do. They don't believe that. Look at the data one. You didn't see the data one. The contract with the Chinese when and they say the request for proposal. I want to see the request for proposal. And when you see the request for proposal, the Chinese, according to the papers, 644 units when it was supposed to be less than half of that. So all of a sudden they're done with that. So what you want is a cadre of a leadership cadre, because the country at this point in our history is at this point, at this inflection point, what is missing is the fact of trust and confidence in the leadership. So if you can put together a group of persons who can capture the trust and confidence by what they have done, by their character, it's worth the risk. It's worth giving it the effort, because the alternative of that is a prime minister who will tell you stop talking and I won't even repeat what he said. It's so terrible that I can't get sued for that because he said it, so he should get sued first. If they want to sue anybody for saying what he said and it was in the papers, then they need to sue him first, because all I will be repeating is something that he should not have said. But you know why he could say it? Because he's so confident that they could do what they want. They could give you licks, they could beat you, they could think they win in the election, and they have no respect for you. So my answer is a cadre of people, and there are people like that in this country. And you get them together, and it may be a different approach, but if you can get that together, I think you can start winning the trust and confidence, which is the cornerstone of any good governance.
Well, I know. I know some of those people too who will really put their all into making this place a better place for all. You know, when you look at what's going on, I mean, it's plain to see. Like a guy was telling me, David's TV one, I could see what's going on here. You know,
I saw that.
so you know, it's difficult to understand the situation we are in now.
And
Yes,
the one with glasses, the man wearing about 10 pairs of glasses,
yeah,
and he can't see.
yeah. So you know, it's really bothersome, because when you think about that kind of hemorrhaging of funds that can develop the ordinary folk in Trinidad and Tobago, it's difficult to understand why we are going through this, and there are
Greed,
lots of laws
greed
now.
and power. Greed is a lot of it is greed. A lot of it is a love of power,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people, yes, they do get. It is very seductive to them,
Yeah.
especially if they didn't have it before,
Hmm.
and then they get it and they get a taste of it, and they can't seem to let it go. That has a lot to do with it. But I think if you come in there with the right idea and you are strong in who you are and strong in your commitment who you are, and you get a group of 6 good men and women, you can be the start a wave, because people just need a wave, but they don't even feel it a little when they go by the beach. When you see a little bit of when the wave crash at the thing,
And
you
the
just
show.
see a little ripple.
Yeah.
They're not seeing a ripple. But I think if people saw that true commitment and felt there were people who would had the ability, you have to have the ability. You can't want to do it and you can't do it. You
Mm-hmm.
have to have the ability, you have to have the capacity to do it. You have to have the capacity to do it, and you have to have the people have to give you a grace. They have to give you grace in doing that. And if
Mm-hmm.
they give you grace in doing that and you follow through, the key thing is to follow through. If you say you're going to do something, stop telling me you're doing things and don't do it. And if you can't finish it in time, come back to me and tell me this, and this is where we reach, but we will finish it by so. And keep your word. And when you keep your word, it's like any relationship with a man and a woman, with children, anything. After a while, when they see that you follow through and you keep your word, you know what you're building up? Trust and confidence. And
Yes.
when you build that trust and confidence in people and ability, and you put in that selflessness of the love of your country first, and they see it by your actions, it will start a tidal wave. And don't say it cannot happen. It has happened in many countries all over the world. In the darkest hours of the Nazi Germany, did Hitler ever think that his dream of the Ottoman, not Ottoman, that's the Turkish people. I think Bismarck, any one of them with Austria and Germany and all them countries, right? Well, he think he ever thought it would ever end? Never. So we must never give up hope. Good word, hope. Never give up hope, and believe that there are enough good people who have the ability and the interest of the country at heart. And once you show them and your actions are, you follow it up with action, it will, and you deal with that drug trade, that'll deal with the drug trade. Go out, deal with drug trade. Don't lock up any of them, because you lock up, you're wasting your time. They'll be in jail for the next 20. They won't be in jail, by the way. They'll be on bail for the next 25 years, by which time they're dead. So don't worry about that. You just disrupt the trade, and when they see you really disrupting the trade, and you really bring in the Americans, and you clean up that drug trade, and you clean up that thing, you will see how people will start to say we have a fighting chance. That is my contribution.
Yes. Well said. Well said.
Thank you, David. You've been very wonderful. People don't know the sacrifice you made to pre-record this show. I do know the sacrifice you made. It was a tremendous sacrifice you did make, personal sacrifice, honestly. And I like to think that we have a good relationship, and I think we have a relationship of trust and confidence. And that is why
Yes.
I think David goes the extra mile when I plead and beg with him to help me out.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I like the vibe, and I too would like to see Trinidad be at that place where we ought to be, or where we should have been a long, long time ago.
Right.
Yeah, so I am hopeful that the right people, the right cadre of people, like you said, would come forward and stand up to what's going on, and let's make a
And
change.
stand up. You don't be afraid to stand up. We life short. What you going to say? You're going to sit on a rocket chair and say, what? How much money your teeth? How much money your teeth? And what you trying to get from that?
Yes.
And then and for those who are not agnostic or atheists, and many people are not, whatever their religious beliefs are, they go to meet whoever they consider their maker. What they going to say? They could carry what their teeth up with them. You
That's
see how meaningless. Just before I leave, I can't remember the last part. I always forget what the last part means. But this man who was very wealthy, I think an emperor of one of those Greek countries or whatever, and he called all his men together, his statesmen, and he said to them, when I die, I want you to get the best doctors in the country to carry my coffin. I also want you to keep my hand outside of the coffin.
Yes, hanging outside the coffin.
You do it. You know the story.
Yeah, I know this story. Yeah.
So I can't remember the third part. And then they said, why you want all the best doctors? He said, because not even the best doctors could save my life. And my hand out, because that money, I cannot take it with me.
Yes.
Remember that all your 1, 2, 3, 4% who are holding money and feeding, just remember when your number call, it's not going with you. And you will have to pay. And guess what? If you have to believe it, if you have a religion, you have a religion. If you don't, you do. But just in case you have a religion, let me see your answer for that.
Yes.
Okay, I am not wisdom. We're not in church, huh? Right. E and O.
Yes.
And Mr. Montano.
Yes.
Young lady who corrected me with Scotia.
Yes.
Mr. Passad. And the gentleman who called. You all keep on calling. We love you to call. I love you to call. You help me and I get a great satisfaction. And David knows I do. That when people call or show interest, it empowers me to say, I'm sharing with you. I have no hidden agenda. Nobody offer me anything, and I don't want anything from them. That's why they do offer me anything.
Oh boy, but it was a fantastic show, and I'm happy that
you always tell me that, David.
Yeah,
I never ever tell me the show's not fantastic.
No. Well, I'm like I told you, I've been privy to be around people who talk that way, people who have the heart and soul into the development of Trinidad and Tobago. I've been very, very lucky as a technical operator to be with those people, and it's just like a continuing saga with you. So I appreciate it very much, and the dispensation, I hope that people appreciate it also, because I know you put a lot of work into every program that you do.
Yes, I do. I really do. And I do it because it's only the right thing to do. You can't ask people to come and hear you talk, and he do this, and he piano and do this. And
No,
it's not in that stupidness. If you want to talk that talk, this is not the show for you.
Yes, it's true. I rather issues than tissues.
I think we overstayed our time.
Yes.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you, audience. You can listen to the show later on YouTube.
Yes.
And we'll be streaming live on Facebook.
Yes.
And join us. And and if you have any topic, you can. It's a lot of you all seem to have David's connection. Because I'm not very good with Facebook, to tell you the truth. I'm not enjoying it, but I'm not so good at those things. I don't know. I'm not so good with that. But if any topic you all want discussed, I will discuss all those number of missteps of this government that you have to wonder, missteps or missteps. So I want to talk about that because I think the time has come. It's too many. So that might be next week's topic, but it will not be Bacchanal because I don't deal with Bacchanal.
Right.
I don't deal with Bacchanal. I'm not good with that.
Yes, and I'm happy you're not good with that.
No, I'm not good with that. I don't like it because
it takes us nowhere.
Not only that, I honestly think it's disrespectful to the listening audience. I think it kind of degrades us as a people.
Yeah.
It degrades me as a person to do that, and it shows lack of respect for the listener. So I wouldn't do something like that. I wouldn't do that. It's not helpful.
That's right. That's right.
All right, David. Thank you so much, listening audience. Thank you so much. And join us again next week, Monday. And if you have anything that you want us to discuss, let David know early because I will start doing the research.
Right.
All right. Bye-bye. See you.
Bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, that's it for today's edition of Hard Talk. a pre-recorded version of it for Monday, Power 102 Digital Monday. And of course, Karen will be back next Monday for another informative segment of Hard Talk right here at Power 102 Digital.